Guys, there is a chip famine happening right now and it's causing some major issues. Just maybe not the kind of chips you're thinking about, unless of course you read the title or the description of the video, then you probably know. But basically, last Friday we put out a video explaining the shortage in shipping containers and saying how this was impacting the global recovery with higher shipping costs and delays happening and so on. So in that video, we actually had a really great comment from Raphael, who pointed out that there's also an issue right now with electronic chips. So we decided to take a closer look at what's been going on. Let's start with semiconductors. A semiconductor can describe a number of different components, such as transistors and LEDs. But the ones that we're most interested in at the moment is the integrated chip, otherwise known as the microchip. Now, shortages in microchips aren't actually that uncommon, and there's typically a shortage roughly every 4 years, so it's not just because of the pandemic and so on. In fact, this phenomenon even has its own name. It's known as a chip famine, like I mentioned at the start of the video. Now, this year, the shortage is being caused by the shocks to supply that obviously started early last year, and the current surge in demand. This pandemic has obviously led to lockdowns, and generally that's meant that people can't venture outside and spend money on things like going out for dinner or going on holiday as much as we might want to. Instead, there's been a surge in consumer spending on things like durable goods, which includes electronics. So for example, late last year we saw the anticipated launch of 2 games consoles from Sony and Microsoft, along with graphics cards from Nvidia, all of which had huge demand and sold out rapidly, with customers eagerly waiting for more stock. And of course, we've had the massive shift to people now working from home, which therefore increased demand for other computer-related products and was a big contributor to China's economic recovery, which is something we discussed in a couple of the videos last week. Now, on top of this increased demand, supply chains are obviously more disrupted now as well. And in fact, manufacturers had been moving towards just-in-time manufacturing, which doesn't make it so easy for them to adapt to these unexpected sudden surges in demand. Now, technically, if all industries were being served equally, this shortage should be equally spread across the different types of businesses that use this type of product. But that's not been the case, and instead the chips are going to the highest bidders. So for example, companies that produce consumer electronics, such as Apple or HP, they pay a lot more for their chips than sectors such as the auto industry, which has led to manufacturers holding reserves for those higher bidders. Now, industrial production has also been picking up at a much quicker pace than expected, particularly in the auto industry, which is seeing increased demand, and it's being reported that new vehicle stocks in US dealerships are 25% below normal levels, with average prices increasing 11% since last year. Unfortunately though, producers of semiconductors haven't been able to keep up the pace and scale up production as quickly, which is resulting in a shortage. This means that for the auto industry, there are lead times of up to 9 months. This is affecting most car companies, including Mercedes, Ford, Fiat Chrysler and Volkswagen, who are all having to make manufacturing changes. For some companies, that means temporarily closing their factories to deal with this shortage. And Audi, which is part of VW, recently announced that they're actually going to be furloughing workers and lowering production forecasts by 10,000 cars in Q1. So it's having a big impact. The 2 largest auto part manufacturers, Bosch and Continental, also acknowledged this issue last month, with some car manufacturers threatening to take legal action against them to actually cover the costs that they've incurred due to this chip shortage. However, ramping up production of chips isn't as simple as it might sound. There aren't actually many companies that are capable of producing the silicon required for them, and it can take weeks to even resume production after a closing a factory or even changing to produce a different type of product. Now, the reason behind this is because microchips are made from silicon wafers, which come in a range of different sizes. Typically, the larger wafer sizes become more standard as time goes on, but some companies prefer to use smaller wafer sizes due to lower costs and avoiding changes in their manufacturing processes. So as 300mm wafers are most commonly used and manufactured, car manufacturers have been left behind as they typically use the smaller sizes such as 200mm, which has seen its manufacturing shrink to make room for the larger size ones. Okay, you still following so far? I know that was a bit of an information dump there with different sizes and stuff, but Basically, we're at a point now where those lower sizes have come in with high demand and we're stuck waiting for producers to increase production of those smaller sizes. It's even got to the point where Germany has asked Taiwan to help with the matter and to prioritize the chips for vehicles. Now, nobody really knows when the shortage will end, but the supply of 200mm chips is expected to be tight for a number of months, possibly up until Q2. But if demand in the computer market cools off, that may make room for the automotive industry. As a result, this bounce back in car sales could come under threat. But there's not a lot that can be done, as the semiconductor industry is currently running hot. And I think as the world becomes more and more dependent on electronics, as if it's not dependent enough already, this may not be the last time we hear of semiconductor shortages. So thanks again to Raphael for the comment that led to this video. Cheers, champ. And let me know your thoughts in the comment section, or any other news or markets that have been catching your eye that you think might be a good topic for another one of our videos. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you in the next one.